Mistake 31. TMI. Too much information. This mistake has taken on entirely new proportions since the first edition of this book was written more than a decade ago. Back then, there was no Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, or the numerous other sites available for staying connected and sharing information. Now, people announce their every move and most intimate thoughts electronically. And it should come as no surprise, given women's propensity toward affiliation, that according to a study conducted by the research giant Nielsen, women are 8% more likely than the average adult to build or update a blog. Men are 9% less likely to do so. Women are 6% more likely to have created at least one social networking profile. Men are 7% less likely to do so. A total of 68% of women use the internet to stay in touch with friends and family. Only 54% of men use it in the same fashion. So what does this mean for you? It means you are a lot more likely than the guy in the cubicle next to you to be sharing too much information electronically. No one except your spouse, child, or maybe your mother really needs to know where you are at any given moment. I don't need to receive your emails with your opinions about an upcoming election, gay marriage, war, peace, or anything else. If I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. For heaven's sake, why in the world would you give your employer or a prospective employer ammunition to make a judgment about you? And that's just electronically. How about face-to-face? The woman who shared this thought with me was a manager who noticed that the women in her department were much more likely than men to reveal complicated personal situations that could later be used against them. The example she gave me was of a woman in her department who was experiencing performance problems on the job. At a one-on-one meeting, the employee broke down crying and told a long, involved story about how her mother was dying, her sisters wouldn't assume any responsibility, the burden fell on her to make all the healthcare decisions, her husband was out of a job. Relevant? Yes, but more than her boss needed to know. It gave the boss the impression she couldn't handle stress well. When a project came up that the boss knew would be stressful, she didn't want to take the risk of giving it to this employee. Sharing personal information isn't in and of itself a mistake. It's sharing too much of it that can come back to bite you. Coaching tips. Be selective about the personal information you share, how you share it, where you share it, and with whom you choose to share it. Remember, once in the ethers, always in the ethers. Less is more when it comes to divulging personal information. A little goes a long way. If you're a manager or supervisor, be even more careful. The rule of thumb I recommend is, be the best friend you can be to your employees, but don't think for a minute they're your best friends. Your peers, the ones you may choose to confide in, are other managers and people at your level. Whether you're a manager or not, don't entirely withhold personal information. I've seen women do this, and it backfires. It makes you look secretive or dishonest. Sharing appropriate amounts of personal information enables others to see the human side of you and, in turn, builds relationships. When a personal situation is impacting your ability to perform your job, be honest, but be brief. It's enough to say, I'm going through a rough time right now, but my job is important to me. I'll work on paying closer attention to the details. Mistake 32. Being overly concerned with offending others. An interesting phenomenon I've observed is that when a man is controversial or offers a different viewpoint, neither men nor women respond as if they're offended. They may be angry or hurt, but the man is rarely accused of acting inappropriately. Because women are more likely to encounter resistance by being told they're out of line, they tend to agree, even when they don't really agree, and fail to confront tough issues. This is just another one of those ploys used against us, and we unwittingly buy into it. If someone acts offended by a legitimate request or concern of yours, the implied message is that you've acted inappropriately or done something wrong. As a result, they know you're more likely to back down. When you back down often enough, you've trained others to feign offense as a defensive posture. It becomes a self-defeating catch-22. Karl Marx used the term mystification to refer to the process whereby those with power and affluence denied the fact that there was a problem between the social classes, then denied that they were denying. Here's how it sounds at work. Employee: It's been 2 years since I've had a raise, and I'd like to talk to you about why I think I deserve one. HR manager: Are you accusing me of overlooking your well-being? Employee: No, I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want to talk about getting a raise. HR manager: Well, you obviously think there's a problem. Employee: In fact, I do think there's a problem with not getting a raise in 2 years, but I'm not blaming you. HR manager: We have a system in place that ensures our staff is fairly treated. Employee: But if I haven't gotten a raise, then the system isn't working. I don't think you see that from your perspective. HR manager: Now you're saying I don't see the problem? Get the picture? This is a convoluted and circuitous method that never quite solves the problem and causes women to back down or not even try to bring up sensitive topics for fear of offending someone. Coaching tips. Use the desk script method provided in Mistake 91 to prepare for difficult conversations. Read Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High by Kenny Patterson, Joseph Grenny, Ron McMillan, and Al Switzler. If you're one of those people who avoid confrontations because you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings, you'll find terrific guidance in this book for how to say what must be said and say it in a way that won't damage the relationship. When expressing a controversial or different viewpoint, use the technique of contrasting what you do want and what you don't want. I don't want to make it appear that I haven't heard what you said, because I have. I do want to express a different way to look at the situation. Let the other person know when what you're about to say is difficult for you by beginning your sentence with, "This is a bit difficult for me to say, but I do want to let you know how I see the situation." This cues most people to be more patient with you. If you know you've expressed yourself inoffensively and the other person is still offended, don't acquiesce. Instead, respond with a simple acknowledgement of his or her feelings. "I can see you feel offended by this," and then revert to listening. Avoid the inclination to backpedal and negate your true sentiments. Mistake 33. Denying the importance of money. I know all the statistics about gender disparity in pay and benefits. You probably do too. I don't want to downplay the significance of these factors. They're real and they're relevant. But unless you're an equal pay activist, you have no control over those factors. The real question then becomes, what are you going to do about it? A year after Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office was released, the second book in the series, Nice Girls Don't Get Rich, was published. In that book, I talked about the many mistakes women make with money because of their complex relationship with it. I spoke with women and asked what kept them from being rich. Almost to a woman, they responded that they didn't have the need to be rich. They only wanted to be comfortable. For crying out loud, I've been comfortable and I've been rich. And believe me, I'd rather be rich. And you should too. You can think of rich as having all the money you need to live your life the way you want, free from concerns about money. Money is power, and power is something women misinterpret and avoid. Ask a woman if she's powerful, and she'll give you 5 reasons why she's not. This translates into feeling uncomfortable with the subject of money and thinking she actually deserves less than she's due. Or worse yet, she doesn't give money a second thought, except in terms of needing enough to pay the bills. What you focus on is what you get. If you're not earning a fair salary or not being given the raises you deserve, it's time to focus on money. It won't mean you're any less committed to your work, only that you're equally committed to your well-being and that of your family. Coaching tips. If you think you're underpaid, do research into the pay ranges typical for your job or industry. You can do this online, through a professional association, or by asking trusted friends at other companies what their ranges are. Don't ask what they earn. Because salaries differ from city to city and field to field, I can't give you a website that is comprehensive, but from your browser, when you have a chance, type in salary surveys, and you'll be given a host of choices. If it turns out that you are underpaid, use logic and facts to make a case for why you should get a raise. Include ways in which you've helped the company to make money, save money, or improve efficiencies. And whenever possible, use numbers. For example, since I took over this role, we've increased sales by 23% and reduced customer complaints by 39%. Ask a friend to help you practice delivering the message. Subscribe to and make a point of reading a magazine that focuses on money and career issues. Several to consider are Fortune, Money, and Smart Money. Overcome the notion that talking about money is crass or impolite. Join or start a women's investment club. Mistake 34. Flirting. How many thousands of women have met the person of their dreams at work, fallen in love, and gotten married? It happens all the time, and it's not such a bad thing, but it is a potentially dangerous one. Just ask Monica Lewinsky or Paula Broadwell. As I told a reporter who asked me if an attractive woman should use her looks to her advantage to get the job she wants, sex sells, but not in the long term. It's more likely than not to backfire. I once coached a woman whom everyone assumed was having an affair with a department manager. Whether she was could never be determined, but that wasn't the point. Her behavior toward him led others to believe she was having an affair with him, and perception is reality. Her flirting, which caused others to be suspicious of their relationship, took the form of laughing a little too loud at his bad jokes, offering to run errands for him, siding with him in meetings when others expressed a different viewpoint, and inviting him to lunch at least once a week, when most others, both men and women, worked through their lunch hours. What's a little harmless flirting, you ask? We know people find partners at work all the time. The harm is that it's the women who flirt, not the men, who most often become the butt of office jokes and who are more likely to suffer the consequences. In the case of the woman I coached that I just mentioned, people excluded her from the grapevine, an important source of information, and from other discussions to which she should have been privy for fear she would share the information with the boss. It reduced their trust in her and diminished her ability to perform effectively. Another woman learned from her 360-degree feedback report that her peers thought she flirted too much. The feedback floored her because she had no inkling how others could perceive her that way. Then one day I happened to see her at lunch with her boss and understood perfectly. As he chatted away confidently, she smiled and listened with her head slightly tilted. I could see how it might be perceived as flirting, but what it really came down to was that the woman came from a traditional Irish family where she'd learned to acquiesce to men. Her way of showing respect to men, whether in one-on-one situations or in meetings, was to dumb down her actions and words. Coaching tips. Don't overtly flirt with coworkers. Knowing glances, whispered conversations, and laughing at stupid jokes don't belong in the workplace. If you are dating or having an intimate relationship with a coworker, be discreet. Conduct your personal business outside work and work-related activities. Don't be so naive as to think you can keep these things secret for long. There's nothing wrong with dating a coworker, just be upfront about it. When you become personally involved with the boss, or if you are the boss, with an employee who reports directly to you, you're playing with fire. Seriously consider the personal and professional risks and don't hesitate to get outside counseling if needed. Mistake 35. Acquiescing to bullies. It's not often I run into bullies. Most people in corporations know how to express themselves tactfully and diplomatically, seeking to solve problems, not create new ones. Such was not the case in a recent meeting with a vice president, however, who was clearly angry that he had been inadvertently double-billed for a particular service. None of the usual techniques for diffusing difficult situations worked. I listened, paraphrased, reflected his feelings, and none of it made a difference. Finally, I said, "I'm not accustomed to being personally attacked." A third person in the meeting tried to intervene by saying, "I think you're getting defensive, Lois." To which I calmly replied, "When I'm personally attacked, I get defensive." After the meeting, the person who intervened said he thought I could have handled it differently. My response was, "The guy is a bully, and I wanted him to know I wouldn't be intimidated." When we're bullied, we do one of two things: counterattack or acquiesce. Neither serves to shift the dynamic. By simply letting someone know how you feel, you stand a better chance of eliminating the offensive behavior, something that will never happen if you acquiesce. Even if the behavior doesn't change, you've put the person on notice that you won't tolerate it, and as such, you've maintained your self-respect. By the way, the dynamic did change after my remark to this bully, and we were ultimately able to find a solution that met his needs. Coaching tips. Use the techniques I mentioned, listening, paraphrasing, reflecting feelings, as a place to begin diffusing a bully. More often than not, they work. Don't roll over and play dead when someone tries to intimidate you. It's a tactic some people regularly use to make their point or get their way. Ask yourself what you're feeling in that moment and express it as an I message. Rather than, "You're not listening to me," say, "I feel I'm not being heard." It's less accusatory, and no one can argue with your feelings. Turn the discussion to problem solving by acknowledging what you've heard and asking what the person would like to do. I understand that you're frustrated with the fact that the shipment has not yet gone out. Let's talk about what we can do to get it to you as soon as possible. Avoid the inclination to apologize. If apologies are appropriate, you can always do so later. Apologizing to a bully only fuels the fire and reinforces the notion that you are a victim. Mistake 36. Decorating your office like your living room. Offices are often an extension of personal homes. In many cases, women spend more time there than they do in their own living rooms. Nevertheless, this doesn't mean that your office should look like your living room. More so than men, women love the aesthetics involved with decor and frequently want to create a warm and comfortable setting, not only for themselves, but for those who enter their workspace as well. I've been in the offices of women who've replaced overhead lighting with table and floor lamps, creating a more ambient environment, and scattered overstuffed couches, throw pillows, and personal memorabilia throughout their space. Depending on the message you want to convey, this can work for or against you. I don't recommend it for most women. It's more appropriate for people responsible for counseling employees than it is for those in other positions. At the other extreme is someone like Christine, a physician at a metropolitan hospital who had nothing on her walls. At our first coaching session, I was struck by how austere and cold her workspace was. As we worked together and I received feedback from her staff, I realized that this was simply a reflection of her personality. One of my coaching tips to her was to warm up her office with family pictures and artwork that would humanize her space. A little later, we'll be talking about personal branding. Your office also represents your brand. Think of it as a marketing tool. Ask yourself how others might describe your office. Would they say it's cluttered, stark, warm? Chances are, whatever they would say about your office is what people will be saying about you. Yes, your office or your workspace can be a reflection of who you are and what's important to you. But unless you're an interior decorator by profession, play it safe. Use your office space to emphasize your organization, good taste, and professionalism. Coaching tips. The decor of your office should be consistent with the kind of firm in which you work. In a more conservative culture, you should select artwork, colors, and furniture that are tasteful and understated. More creative fields can tolerate a bolder approach. Given that your office or workspace makes a statement about you, do pay attention to decor. In most offices, you're assigned furniture, but how you accessorize it is up to you. Choose accessories that reflect your personality without overly emphasizing the feminine side of you. If you lean toward minimalism, then minimally have family pictures or other photos displayed where people can see them. They serve to humanize you and act as conversation starters. One single woman I know has a framed picture of her dog on her desk. Look at your office with fresh eyes. If someone very special were coming to visit you at work, what would you change? Why? What adjectives would you attach to your workspace if you didn't know who worked there? Are those the adjectives you want to be used about you? Keep your visible workspace neat and clean. It conveys the impression of being organized and on top of things. Mistake 37. Feeding others. Unless you're Betty Crocker, there shouldn't be home-baked cookies, M&Ms, jelly beans, or other food on your desk. Hillary Rodham Clinton may have been lambasted for her comment about not staying home and baking cookies while her husband was running for president, but her point was well taken. We don't ascribe a sense of impact or import to people who feed others. It may seem like a small or inconsequential thing, but the fact is, you rarely see food on men's desks. Similarly, men don't bring in leftovers from dinner the night before to share with coworkers. The act of feeding is equated with nourishing, and nourishing is definitely a stereotypically female attribute. Additionally, food on the desk is often an invitation to stop and chat a moment. People can't just eat and run. Combined, the aspects of feeding and encouraging conversation emphasize stereotypically feminine qualities, often in the very women who don't need to emphasize them quite so much. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule, and this is one of them. Lisa Dewey, formerly manager of training and development at Universal Entertainment, told me she often coaches her own employees, especially men, who are perceived by others to be a bit too brusque, domineering, or downright abrasive, emphasis on the word to put a candy dish on their desks. The reason is obvious. She wants them to warm up their image and balance their more aggressive behaviors. In this regard, the food is used as a strategy to create balance in a personality that might not be perceived as warm. Similarly, Lisa has a huge candy bowl on her own desk, in part because she wants to eat it, although you could never tell by looking at her, and in part because she is in a role where people often come to her office to discuss personal and confidential matters. The candy is designed to make people feel comfortable with her. Again, she's using it strategically. If you don't want to be perceived as stereotypical, think twice before putting food on your desk or in other ways feeding people at work. This is especially true if you're a woman who makes many of the other mistakes contained in this audiobook. As with many of the tips in this audiobook, it isn't the food alone that's lethal, it's the combination of mistakes that diminishes your credibility. Coaching tips. Unless feeding people is a conscious strategy, just say no to feeding people at work. If you're worried about them going to waste, take the leftovers from a weekend party to a homeless shelter rather than the office. Don't volunteer to organize the company potluck lunch. There are much better things you want to be known for being good at. Mistake 38. Minimizing your emotional intelligence. The intelligence quotient, or IQ, that you're born with doesn't change much over the course of your lifetime, and new research shows that it isn't even the most important factor contributing to success. As I mentioned earlier, your emotional quotient, or EQ, plays a far greater role in determining how successful you will be in a variety of areas. For example, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman found that people would rather do business with someone they like and trust than with someone they don't, even if the likable person is offering a lower quality product or service at a higher price. A study of hiring practices by L'Oreal showed that salespeople who were hired based on their emotional intelligence earned $90,000 more annually than those hired through traditional methods. In the past, we called these the soft skills, most likely because women exhibited them to a greater degree than men. As I frequently chided my male clients who disparagingly used this term to refer to the work we were doing together, if they're so soft, what makes them so hard for you? The good news for women is that we surpass men on 4 of 5 measures of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Men and women are equal on the 5th measure, motivation. Yet despite the fact that we possess these critical skills, we often don't value them, nor do we consciously use them to our advantage. Instead, we focus on working harder and longer, neither of which will ensure success absent high EQ. Earlier, I cited research that shows having more women in leadership roles correlates to greater financial returns for a company or firm. Why do you think that is? Robin Cohen and Linda Kornfeld, managing partners at the law firm Dickstein Shapiro, claim that it's because women exhibit the following behaviors to a greater degree than men: working to form connections with others in order to develop relationships, focusing on team building and working collaboratively toward a common goal rather than individual success, developing and motivating others through positive reinforcement, and talking through business approaches and incorporating the ideas of others before making final decisions. In short, using your EQ not only helps to further your career, it adds to your company's bottom line as well. Coaching tips. Read Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradbury and Jean Greaves. The book contains the opportunity to assess your EQ and provides insights into how you can develop and use yours to your fullest advantage. Put words to the emotions that are often present but rarely expressed in meetings. For example, when tension is running high, say something like, "It's clear we all have strong feelings about this subject. How about if we take a breather and come back to the table to discuss it further?" Doing so will cause you to be seen as someone who can read a room, an invaluable asset to any group. Begin meetings with casual conversation that expresses an interest in the other person. Although most people will welcome the opportunity to talk about themselves or matters that are important to them, some won't, in which case you can shift to the business at hand sooner rather than later. At social events, use your EQ to make introductions between people with common interests or backgrounds. Others will appreciate your efforts to make them feel comfortable and welcome in a group. Don't hesitate to comment on someone's unspoken mood. If it looks like a coworker seems a little down, an overture such as, "Is everything okay? You don't seem like yourself," will let them know you see them as a human being, not just a human doing. If they don't want to discuss it, they won't, but they will remember that you showed concern. Mistake 39. Being a doormat. Artist Pablo Picasso once said, "There are only 2 types of women, goddesses and doormats." And since you're listening to this book, I have a hunch you don't quite see yourself as a goddess. Yet. What's the difference? Consider these comparisons. Doormats do whatever is asked of them. Goddesses get others to do what they ask. Doormats tolerate mental and physical abuse. Goddesses banish abusers from their presence. Doormats believe it is their responsibility to care for others. Goddesses believe it is the responsibility of others to care for them. Doormats are disrespected. Goddesses are worshipped. Doormats never ask for anything for themselves. Goddesses feel entitled to get what they want. Doormats can't say no. Goddesses won't take no for an answer. Doormats give others permission to walk on them. Goddesses walk away from people who walk on them. Would you rather be the pigeon or the statue? Being a doormat might make you feel superior in a Mother Teresa sort of way in the short term, but it won't get you where you want to be in the long term. Coaching tips. Learn to manage expectations by clearly stating what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Without ever having to say no, you can let others know the boundaries of your flexibility. For example, if you're asked to deliver a report in an unreasonably short period of time, you can say, "I'm happy to do the report. In the amount of time you've given me, however, it won't be thorough. So if you want a better end product, my recommendation is to extend the deadline by 2 days." Trust your feelings. If you feel as if you're being abused or taken advantage of, you probably are. In such instances, let the other person know how you're feeling and what you would like to change. Although you can't control the actions of others, you can remove yourself from unhealthy situations. Don't wait to be given what you want. Ask for it. Too often, women expect others to be mind readers and are disappointed when people prove they're not particularly adept at this particular skill. If you don't ask, you don't usually get. Mistake 40. Offering a limp handshake. Women may not have the exclusive rights on this one, but we are more likely to hold back when offering a hand in greeting. For fear of appearing too masculine, we let the pendulum swing the other way. A handshake is how you make your first impression upon initially meeting someone. It says something about you before you ever open your mouth. Although you don't want to develop a bone-crushing grasp, you do want to be certain your handshake conveys the message, "I'm someone to be taken seriously." One good pump and a concise greeting, such as, "I'm delighted to finally meet you," combined with solid eye contact, will do the trick. Coaching tips. Practice your handshake with both male and female friends or colleagues. Get their feedback about whether yours is too limp or too strong. You may have a different handshake for men than for women. Continue practicing until you find a place where both men and women tell you your handshake conveys the message you want it to. Here's a tip a colleague's father taught him when he was a young boy. Keep extending your hand until you hook thumbs. Try it, and you'll see how it works. Don't stop with just grabbing fingers. And by the way, how many fathers taught their daughters how to shake hands? When meeting someone for the first time, if he or she doesn't offer a hand first, offer yours. It's a sign of confidence. Depending on the situation, you may want to convey a sense of sincerity or warmth. This may be the case when meeting someone in person for the first time after speaking by phone for some extended period. To do this, loosen the grip just a bit and briefly place your left hand on top of the person's right hand as it shakes yours. Again, practice this until it comes naturally. While I'm on the subject of greetings, the question often comes up as to whether it's appropriate to greet an associate with a hug. This one is tricky. My advice is to never hug someone unless he or she does so first. Not only is it a matter of invading another person's space, but it also softens the greeting.